Next is the chairperson's remarks. I'll tell you, this is the best well-attended school committee meeting we've ever had. That will be all of my chairperson's remarks. The next item on the agenda is the Student of the Month. This is our favorite item on the agenda. The Student of the Month program was established in 2019 by the school committee to honor exemplary students. Nominations are collected throughout the year from staff members at all 5 schools. Nominations are made through 5 categories: service to fellow students, teachers, and community, dedication, determination, and persistence in the face of obstacles, attitude towards learning, high achievement in academics, athletics, or performing arts, and significant improvement in academics, athletics, or performing arts. Selections are made by the chair of the school committee, the superintendent, and 1 member of the policy and advocacy subcommittee. This is a first for us. Usually the student of the month is an individual, but this month it's not only more than one person, it's an entire team. We are pleased to welcome the November 2002 Student of the Month, the Triton Unified Basketball Team. I'd like to invite Athletic Director Tim Alvich to come up and tell us about the team.
Great. Hard to face. I don't know which way to face. On behalf of the whole team and the coaches, I want to thank the school committee and Triton Regional School District for making this team happen. Just a little over a year ago, this was a vision of adding a new varsity sport here at Triton. And this team, I couldn't be any more prouder of a team than I am tonight. They started the season not really knowing each other. They started the game of basketball, led by their coaches. They improved so much. They forged lifelong friendships. They earned their varsity letters tonight with a pizza party banquet. And I couldn't be more proud of them. So on behalf of all the coaches and the players, I would like to read everyone, and then we'll do a round of applause for the unified basketball team. Led by coaches Amy Holland, Amy Mansfield, Jen Scott, Caitlin McElhaney Rios, and Melissa Janvrin. In numerical order, Pedro D'Souza, number 2. Number 4, Emerson Morengi, just won her field hockey game. She is here in spirit. Number 11, Jessica Sullivan. Number 14, Amelia Joyce. Number 15, Riley White. Number 21, Andrew Najelski. Number 22, Justin Bishop. Number 23, Lucas Anderson. Number 24, Tyler Egan. Number 25, Dimitri Balou. Number 30, Natalie Weiss. Number 32, Jack Lindholm. Number 33, Andrew Johnson. Number 35, Griffin Dupuis. Number 40, Sophia Chapman. She's also on the field hockey team. And last but certainly not least, number 41, Anthony Robertson. If we could give a round of applause to the Triton Unified Basketball Team. If we could gather the whole team for a team picture with our framed certificate, and thank you to the school committee for recognizing the team. Probably have to go this way, huh? Come on over here, yeah.
Mark.
We probably deserve it.
The next item on the agenda is the oral communications from the public. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee? The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'm going to read the donations. $7,500 from Charles and Regina Simons for expenses for the French exchange program, and $1,500 from Kathleen Linans for the STEM lab at the Pine Grove School. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
There's one filter permission too.
Oh, yeah. There is also one final permission request for an out-of-state field trip for Salisbury Elementary, 6th grade, to attend Camp Kiev.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item on the agenda is the student representative report. I am very excited to welcome back our new student representative, Junior Andrew Doherty, who will provide us with his report.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back in your presence again and to share with you the most recent developments in the student body here at Triton. I'm very excited to announce that just following the midterm elections, here at Triton, we had a very interesting student mock election that occurred. So Triton High School students who are enrolled in a U.S. government class here were able to set up a mock election that mirrored candidates and questions that actually appeared on this year's ballot. This allowed students to practice good citizenship by simulating what a realistic voting situation would be like and to prep them of what their voting situation will be in years to come. Moving on, I'm also very excited to announce that tomorrow at approximately 1:20 in the high school stadium, a student-organized and led ceremony will take place to dedicate a stadium bench to POW American veterans. At the last period of the school day tomorrow, students and teachers will be led to the bleachers where a POW bench will be dedicated during a ceremony that will include a student-performed national anthem and taps. Our local state senator, Bruce Tarr, and a veteran organization will also be in attendance to show their support. In the 2 weeks coming ahead, I'm also excited to announce that student classes here are also prepping for Spirit Week, and hoping to return festivities in the celebration that occurred to pre-COVID times. So students have begun to design decorations for the event, and Student Council is finalizing plans on different activities such as Penny Wars and a Stuff a Bus program here at Triton. All these programs are meant to bring students and teachers closer together and just to bolster school spirit, and we're so excited to hopefully see how far and how successful this program can achieve this year. Also, in the rearview mirror, as we end the year to our fall sports season, I'd like to congratulate all sports teams on their seasons and thank the coaches and athletic directors for their work that they've put to ensure that each team had as successful a season as possible. The student body is looking forward to the winter season of Triton sports ahead that will commence after the Thanksgiving holiday. A new item that I'd like to present to the board and to the community is that I'm looking to expand my outreach and providing information about schools as the student council advisor here at the high school, Ms. Bolio. She's helping me outreach to the Triton Middle School and the 3 other elementary schools, so we may gain a little insight as to what's occurring in their community. So the idea would be to set up a document and have representatives from those given schools type, let's say, a concert or a special event that's occurring, just so more members of the community are informed of what's going on. So we feel that's a good way to make sure they feel heard and just bolster support for all our representative schools. One concern that the student body has, unfortunately, is the topic of the fight club that occurred not too long ago. A few weeks ago, when a group of students were found to have been brawling each other in Triton campus when no adults were present. Although these individuals were eventually stopped and disciplined, the student body as a whole was largely shocked at what occurred here, and the question was raised whether how can we prevent such matters from occurring in the future. We feel that these issues should not only be addressed by the staff and administration here at Triton, but should be taken as part on the community and what we students can help to help administration solve such issues. On behalf of the student body, I would like to express our readiness to provide change and support in the steps moving further to ensure that such actions don't ever occur here at Triton again. Thank you guys so much for your time, and hopefully we can solve such issues in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Does anybody have any? Thank you for your time too, Andrew. The next item on the agenda is new business. Would any members like to raise items for inclusion on a future agenda? The next item is district communication report. I'd like to thank Andrea Sy for joining us tonight, and I'm going to pass this off to the superintendent for an introduction.
So you'll remember that last year we began speaking about just a review of our overall communications. We had been talking about an update to our website for 3 years, and finally got that off the ground earlier this fall. And so part of that was to have Andrea Sy as a parent, but also own Sy Communications, to have her come in and take a look at our overall communications across the district and make suggestions for improvement where we're doing well and where we might find a new and better way to reach out to families in the greater community. So I'm going to invite her to share this report. I'm realizing we don't have a seat at the table, so do you mind standing at the microphone, or maybe, you know what, do you want to come sit in my chair? Come on. Or we'll slide down. You can sit down next to Shannon. Oh, you? She doesn't want to be a member of the committee.
I have about 10 minutes, so what I was going to do is just give you kind of a broad brush overview of what I learned in terms of creating this report, and then just leave some time for you to ask me any questions. So I came in, it was last spring, and met with Brian just to talk a little bit about ways that we could create more engaging communications and kind of cultivate school pride, and what are some ways that we could do that. We wanted to talk about re-engaging families and better ways to sort of celebrate people's and their successes throughout the whole district. So we chatted, we talked about some ways we could do that, and I thought, well, the first thing we can do is kind of create a report where I interview people within the district. So I talked to most of the principals, I talked to parents, I talked to students, I talked to community members, just to get a feel for how they felt we were doing, and kind of took all of that information and summarized that in here, as well as what I felt were some recommendations for things that we could do moving forward. So that's what this report is about. And really the idea was, in this digital world, is to create experiences for people that are really easy and pleasant to absorb, so that people are getting the right information at the right time, and making sure that we're kind of covering how people are absorbing their information in the way that they want to receive it from Triton. So, one of the things that we see in our world today is that everybody is very used to seeing things visually, right? So you can see your dog at doggy daycare, you can see your kids, you see who's ringing your doorbell. So one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we give people the opportunity to see what's happening within our school districts, and see all the great things that are happening in terms of our communities. So I looked through all of the different technologies that we currently employ and kind of reviewed those, as well as suggested some other ones. So I'll just go through those a little bit here. And again, the goal was really to improve the quality of all of the communications across all of the channels. So what I did is, through all of those interviews, is just gathered some information about, what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses and what are some opportunities. And what I did here is sort of summarize all of that information that I got from all of those different interviews. And the strengths were very clear. It was a strong leadership team, a varied and diverse curriculum, passionate teachers, consistent weekly email communications. A few people mentioned sort of the personality and humor that Brian shows in the calls to home over snow days and all of that. So, and it's those kinds of things that helps really build the Triton brand, and makes people feel more comfortable, with the school in general. So, the weaknesses were a lackluster online presence, which has been addressed, but multiple and confusing social media channels, too many emails, too much repetitive information, poorly designed emails. People were asking for more timely information, and then more consistent use of tools and communications. That gives us a lot of opportunities, to improve some things that we're currently doing. And a lot of those opportunities I kind of spell out in each of the different strategies and tactics. But there's an opportunity to really take the communications that are happening around the school and make them improve them, but also make them more consistent. So what's happening is that people who hear from one school are hearing in different ways and in different mediums from other schools. So trying to kind of make that consistent, so that as somebody goes from elementary school to middle school to high school, they start to understand, how they're going to receive the information from the schools. And then, each school having accessible form of communication and an up-to-date website is critical because websites are sort of the major hub of how people get their information these days. And then there's a lot of opportunities to recognize successes within our community and our school district, even with those activities outside of the school. So maybe Girl Scouts or rock climbing or ice skating, and getting an understanding of some of those successes that are happening for people within our district, but also able to celebrate those together. So what I did is I went through each of the different areas, and I did do a review of the website, although it has been updated since, which is good. And so I think it's a really great improvement in terms of being a good hub for communication. One of the things I had suggested is maybe have something on there that's a sign-up form for the community. So people who want to know what's happening, alumni, how can they stay informed? And maybe there's a way for them to sign up for emails and those kinds of things. Using the website. And then I did a review of social media. And one of the things I looked at is, what channels do we want to employ and who are using what channels? And so if we think about our teenagers, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, those are the channels that they are on. And then if we're trying to reach parents or their greater community, then maybe Facebook is more of the appropriate channel. But what's happening is that there's so many different social media outlets that are available, it can get confusing, and then there's so many different opportunities for people to create their own Facebook pages. So in the appendix, you'll see I did a search for Triton, and there's probably 30 to 40 different Facebook pages related to our school, all using different branding, all using different nomenclature. And so there's a really good opportunity there to make that a lot more consistent. So determining how we name the Facebook page and what we use for visuals, and then determining what content is appropriate to post where. I know I don't believe there's guidelines yet in terms of what's okay to post or what different schools should post, but if we created some guidelines for that, then it would make it more clear as to where people could get their different information from. And then some ideas to kind of gather content is to kind of create school ambassadors. So people at each of the different schools who sort of take on the role of developing and helping people create that content. These kids are so good at social media that we have a lot of talent just within our school systems to sort of tap into in terms of getting help there. But they might be able to help to kind of create more information about what's happening at each of the schools, so that can be shared out through social media. So another suggestion was having like takeover days and allowing certain groups to use a channel for a week. Let's say if there's a play coming up, then the theater group could do a takeover day of all of the channels. And this way everybody knows what's going to happen, that the play is coming up and when it will be there. So certain ideas like that are included in the report. Another big area is video, and that is really one of the major ways that people are absorbing their information, right? So if you're looking on how to fix your toilet, you're probably looking at YouTube these days, right? So creating a YouTube channel for our district beyond like the Triton, VTV channel was an idea. In terms of creating different videos like for teachers to introduce themselves, new teachers, maybe there's a 30-second spots for new teachers to introduce themselves and show their face. Maybe there's a folder that is the how-tos, like how do you navigate My School Bucks and how do you figure out how to log into Aspen? And so maybe there's folders there within that YouTube channel that can be the different ideas on how to do that. There could be a folder where the school budget communications are all on there in videos, and this way it just organizes it. And then if there's one place for people to go, they know that they can see all these different videos and all these different ideas. And then email, there's lots of conversation, certainly about email, because there was a lot of complaints about the content of the email being repetitive or not being interesting or timely. And the use of the email Blackboard is a little bit cumbersome. It doesn't really create the support for using images or videos. And so that's a problem because people are very visual, and so everybody wants to see things. And when you get an email that's 600 words long and has things that you saw last week and then the week before, people tend to shut off because we're all getting, mass amounts of emails all the time. So I came up with just some ideas in terms of changing up the content and using more visuals to get our communications across that way. So. The other thing is that, and I didn't even know this, I'm like a Triton mom, but there's this newspaper that the kids put together, and I read it in Brian's office, and it's fabulous, and I didn't even realize that it existed. And so getting a link to that newspaper out to the community, be either Facebook or the other social media channels or by email would be great, and then you get a chance to read about the different things that the teams have been doing or the school committees and all of that. So that would be something that would be great to communicate. And then we could create an email account for people to submit the accomplishments of students or even teachers within the district for inclusion in the next email, in the Voice newspaper or social media. So that's a way to kind of get the community to submit different ideas about things that their children have done or things that the teachers have done. Maybe it was a ski racing championship that nobody would have known about, but those kinds of things. So, and then that just helps to create more content that's really positive for the things that the people within the district are doing. So. And then texting, which we really just started, but it's great. But boy, the busing is really wow. That's daily, so I have to shut my phone off in the morning. But anyway, texting is the perfect way to reach people with timely information, and we might want to take more advantage of using texting in terms of the information that we share. So it's not just that bus 17 is being covered by bus 14, but there's probably other types of information that would be really interesting for people to get by text as well. You don't want to overload people, but again, it's a great medium in which to let people know what's going on. So that's, again, just a really broad brushstroke of the whole report, but I think there's copies for everybody here. Some of the recommendations that I gave, it's not like anything can be done all at once, but it's something that, we could prioritize things that make the most sense and then figure out ways to improve all of the communication. One of the things I chatted about with people was the tagline, and I just couldn't get many people to give me what it was. So we have a tagline that isn't very memorable or doesn't stick with people, and it might be something that we want to think about as we move forward, is to create a tagline that is maybe a little bit more powerful or engaging or something that people actually remember, because there wasn't many people that could tell me what it was. And then at the end, I just suggested just a couple little changes in the nomenclature for the district in schools, again, just to be consistent, so that it makes more sense, so that the word regional is only used when we're talking about like the regional school district, and changing Pine Grove instead of Pine Grove School, Pine Grove Elementary, because if I am moving here from Alabama and I don't know what the schools are, I may not know that Pine Grove is actually an elementary school like Newberry and Salisbury. So just some suggestions there. And then, like I said, in the end is just, again, this is a compilation of all of the different, just Facebook pages, but there's a lot of multiples on here. There's a couple pages for the Newberry Elementary School. There's a few that cover the Triton High School. And so we want to make sure if people are searching or they're trying to engage with us, that it's really clear which ones are the right ones to be following. So, and I think the guidelines would really help with that. And then we're working on, creating some consistent branding with a logo, which is really exciting. So, so are there questions for me? I know that was an overview. I only had 10 minutes, so I didn't want to take too much of your time. I know you have lots of other things to address at the meeting, but.
Any questions? Anybody have any questions?
I was thorough, okay. Yeah, so just take a read of it, and then I have business cards so that if anybody has questions or anything after the fact, that you guys could always just reach out to me, so I'll just leave a stack here. And then, feel free to reach out to me anytime. It was a wonderful project to be involved in. I'm, committed as a part of the community. It was really fun to talk to everybody and kind of put this information together. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, there's,
I think there are some questions.
Well, I think this is more of a Brian question, which is why I was going to, I'm sorry. So I think this report is great because it addresses everything, and I think it answers a lot of questions that I've kind of wondered about where our thought process should be going on this, as we've had marketing discussions for 3 years now. And I am super glad to see the website up. But I guess the question is, this is a phenomenal amount of information, and in your closing, you talk about prioritizing and kind of figuring out a strategy for what comes next. And I guess, so that's my question is this a budget discussion? Is this something that you intend to bring back to the school committee as a strategy down the road? I guess I'm wondering, I feel like this takes us so far and it takes us to a really good point, but I guess I'm wondering what comes next, and I was hoping for insight from you on.
Yeah, so there's a lot that we have to do next, right? And I think some will have budget implications. So the theory behind this is there's so much, I'm sitting here looking at administrators and a bunch of middle school teachers. The work that they're doing all day is so amazing, and we don't sell it. And the reality is, in today's world, as Andrea said, it's visual. And 20 years ago, it was parents trusted and sent their kids off to school and assumed great things were happening. And there are sometimes bad assumptions, but sometimes it's just people don't know if it's not being fed. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, right? There are other things that Andrea used the term ambassadors to layer one more thing on at the schools, to say, hey, we want to get pictures out there, we want social media, because it matters, right? When people feel good about things that are happening, they're going to respond differently as parent, as community members, when they feel like it's good. Even though if there's nothing different happening, we're just sending out pictures and posts. So we've got a lot of work to do to tease out what is low-hanging fruit, what are the things that we can change. Am I doing a monthly video? Thanks for writing that down, Andrea.
Yeah.
Do I have to up my game with snow calls, right? Get back to fun, Mr. Forget. So, there's low-hanging fruit, and then there are things that, does it make sense to have a position, a stipended position, or something at each school that's tasked with making sure that everything that's happening is also being portrayed community-wide. The one big thing, Andrea mentioned it, is email, and several people sitting here use Blackboard, and it is so, it's so archaic. So we have to have a closed system so that when we want to communicate, sorry, Kyle, to pick on buses, when Bus wants to communicate, that's his new nickname, when Kyle needs to communicate in the morning with just families of a particular school or a grade level, we need a system that does that. But we also want Aunt Susie from Toledo, Ohio, to be able to sign up and get the newsletters for all the great stuff happening at, their nephew's school over in Triton. So constant contact is one. I know some principals have shifted to a format called SMORE, but even that doesn't have a nice user interface to collect emails. So that concept of being able to sign up on the website for general communications versus what are we doing for routine, kind of more confidential communication. So yes, this is not the solution. This is here's some information, more to be done.
There's a lot of classes. There's, marketing entrepreneurship. There's a videography class. So maybe tapping into some of the kids that are involved in those classes. And that's kind of free labor, in terms of, and also they'll learn something. So maybe there's a mentor that they have, and so they can, learn from that mentor along with the teachers, who are teaching that class. And then that's a way to kind of tap into, some people and some help in terms of this. And that could be something that becomes part of the curriculum, and then maybe that kind of takes care of a little bit as well, because it's kind of we'll do it ourselves and have it with the kids' help. So it's a lot. There's a lot to chew here, but at least I feel like if it's all here, then it's a matter of like, okay, how do we attack it and what makes the most sense? And I think, there's some things that are low-hanging fruit that are easier to
This was the
accomplish.
first step, and I felt like it made sense to have Andrea come and present this to you, and then I'll be coming back to you with more, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to kind of know what the expectation was on time.
Drop the mic, this is done.
It's done. my worry is like,
It's done here. That's great.
right? Things like this age, and I'm worried, like you're at a stage that I don't want to let it age out too far.
I am confident none of you will let me let this age,
Oh.
and I don't want to let it age either.
Yeah.
I meant to say first.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity. It was a lot of fun to work on, so.
This has been we've talked about marketing for 3 years, like Narissa said, and it's nice to have it on paper because now we can tell Brian, page 5, section 3.
Uh-oh. Sorry.
But thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the middle school improvement plan. Middle school principal Ellen McCray is here to take us through his school improvement plan and the changes to the middle school schedule this year. Out of respect for his time, I would like to request that the committee allow him to present now instead of as listed in the agenda. Are there any objections? Take it away.
Hi. So Al, did you want us to clear some space? I know you have friends that you brought. Or is that for different sections? Want to roll
Well,
some
I
chairs
reserve
over?
the right to just say, I'm going to let someone else articulate this
Okay,
point
cool.
or something, okay. So hi. So after the last meeting, I went away, processed what was tough spoken about, and decided to embrace the opportunity to take a look deeper at the data and to come back with a math and an ELA goal for our school improvement plan. I want to thank, first of all, Kelly Buckley, our math specialist, is here. She's also the content leader for math, which has been a very helpful thing as far as getting our math department on one page, because she can be around and be in all the classrooms and deal with both 7th and 8th grade. And Tony Evans is also here. She is our reading specialist and also the content leader for ELA, and doing that same thing. So that's been very helpful when we're trying to get information together and have someone facilitate meetings with those groups of people. So they did a lot of work helping putting these goals together. So I'm not going to go through the whole plan. I've talked about the beginning of the plan. I just would like to add that in adding these 2 goals, I did take out 1 goal. The last time we spoke, we had a goal referencing social-emotional learning, and I had also indicated that we'd be dropping the goal concerning the professional development model that we had that we no longer use. I felt like the things, we're doing a lot of social-emotional learning things. Part of that goal was like quarterly assemblies with the students. We continue to do that. We continue to use Kara Briley as a resource for things that we need, and she's been great at that. So those kind of things are ongoing and will continue to go. So we felt comfortable dropping that and adding these 2 in. I did keep the goal about adding new classes in the 7th grade. I think those, especially adding world language, has, is a good thing to use to move forward and improve the school. I think it's given kids another opportunity in a different subject, and some of the other classes have given so 7th graders some choice, which we don't get a lot of given our schedule. I also kept in the goal regarding the therapeutic program. It's been a work in progress. Getting everybody on the same page and to putting those kind of programs together with a new social worker and teacher and some IAs and some challenging kids, but it's really coming along. They've done incredible work. We got we're getting some pretty good feedback from parents. So I think that's an important thing to keep in this as well, because it helps the entire school by giving a group of potentially disruptive students a lot of support and help, which helps, I think, across all content in all classrooms. So we'll continue to have that in there. So our new goal 3 is our ELA goal. I'm gonna have to take my glasses out because it's that time of life. This goal is focused on written language, looking at the ELA scores for MCAS. It was, especially in 8th grade, the questions concerning written language, particularly when their students are asked to work on idea development, we're below the state average. And I've been here for quite a while, and the amount of MCAS scores that the middle school had that came up below the state average was a lot more than I've seen. Won't get into reasons for that. Obviously, we've had quite a few years of different kind of education, but it's, you know, usually in past years, it's one question here, one question there. So that piece really jumped out. So we decided that would be a good focus. Because, you know, obviously, idea development is a crucial step in writing, and I think improving on those questions alone will bring our entire MCAS score up. So looking at some of the priority actions, you know, one of the things we've done in our new schedule, obviously, is to restore teams, and in that we have team meeting times now. Part of that is to talk about students and issues going on that, but also they can talk about, you know, educational things across curriculum, across content. And one of those things they'll be talking about is how we're teaching writing. We obviously, every year, we come up with intervention groups. That continues to happen, and that's based on assessment data. We're starting those now here in second quarter. We're providing monthly common planning time for the ELA teachers. Normally, our content times are every 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, sometimes around benchmark testing. We just felt like increasing those, give them a chance to share best practices and talk about writing. For instance, this past week, they were talking about, they were creating a common rubric, writing rubric, and which will support writing not only in ELA but across all the content areas. I feel like sometimes when you do an ELA goal, it all falls on the ELA teachers, and that really shouldn't be the case. There's a lot of writing being done in social studies. There's a lot of writing being done in science. So I think we have to share that. So hopefully that will start to happen. As I said, on page 13 now, they developed a common rubric, and we'll start using that across content. The ELA teachers are piloting new curriculum this year. They're doing Amplify right now. After the holidays, they will start on a half year of EL education. So at the end of the year, hopefully we'll have some decisions there. And I'm also encouraging, and they want to do some peer observations and watch each other do some teaching. So that very quickly goes over the ELA goal. I'm happy to take questions on that before I move on, if there are any.
Does anybody have any questions?
So thank you for this. I appreciate seeing the ELA goal in here. I just have a few questions. Some of them are listed as the stage as full implementation already. Is that because sort of in the conceptualization of this goal and now those have already been implemented, or are those, I guess I'm used to seeing things kind of progress from an earlier stage toward the full implementation?
Well, so intervention groups we've done for a long time. We look at data, we see the kids who are really struggling, and we put together 7th and 8th grade intervention groups, and we do that during flex time. So that is something that's been ongoing. So that's why I put full implementation for that. We've always tried to support, and we did a lot last year on writing across all content. So I feel like maybe full implementation, maybe that's a little generous, I don't know. But it seems like it's something we talk about and do on a yearly basis, so I just felt that that was accurate. I don't know if there's any, the rest are either initial or.
So I guess it sounds more like it's, you've set the goal, and then this is sort of part of the, it's already existing?
Yeah, so we pull in things that we already do that will help deliver
Okay.
that goal. So
All right.
so having, you know, intervention groups for kids who are struggling with reading or writing will help this goal overall,
Okay, all right.
even though we still have already had it in place.
And this one is, this goal seems to revolve specifically around MCAS. Are there other ways to measure progress throughout the year as you're working on the 2022-2023 implementations to kind of gauge how this is going? Or is this something that you really won't kind of have the feedback on if that the improvement is happening until we hit MCAS in the spring and then get those scores back in the fall?
We're going to be doing the district writing prompt. I know there's already been some kind of baseline writing done based on the piloting of the curriculum. So I think this year, I think we have a little bit more to use to compare as we go forward through the year. So it won't be just a standalone, let's go see how we do on MCAS. I think there will be some ways to look at things and assess it as we go through the year, yeah.
Okay. And my last question, and this is maybe something that I probably should know but don't, is exactly how much of the MCAS ELA score is writing? Do you have any idea? I know it's part of it, but I don't know if it's like big part or if it is a big part.
You should speak in the microphone. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So the writing is a large component of MCAS, and historically, it's what brings our scores down. So if I looked carefully at 7th and 8th grade, most of the scores that are below 50% are all related to writing. So the goal here is to increase writing, which will then increase scores across the board. And can I address your other question as well? So every month in 7th and 8th grade, we will be doing a writing assessment. We will be implementing one in a week. We've already done a baseline. So every single month, the English teachers will be providing a writing assessment to gauge where we're at, along with the common writing assessment. And then I should note that the science teachers and the social studies teachers have made this a priority for their own goals and professional practice. So the whole school is on board with writing, knowing that this is our greatest area of concern right now.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Can I say one other thing about the implementation? So maybe we should include the definitions. It's the implementation stages. I don't think we include them in the SIPs. It's in the front of the district strategy. Oh, it is there?
I think so.
No, it's not. So full implementation, after full implementation is innovation. I should put my glasses on too. Innovation and then sustainability. So full implementation talks about it being an accepted practice. That doesn't mean it's perfected, right? So just to clarify that.
All right, moving on. So our fourth goal is our math goal. And just before I start, I just wanted to, you probably have in your lead responsibility on 4A and 4B, the priority actions, it says a reading specialist instead of math specialist. I'm sorry, I did a lot of cutting, pasting, and I forgot to change that. So that should be principal, 7th grade, 8th grade teachers, math specialist, and then 4B should be administration math specialist, 7th and 8th grade math teachers, not ELA. So I apologize for that. So this goal is, So our math scores aren't good. I'll be the first one to tell you that. And we needed to figure out where we go to get our best chance for improvement and what would kind of give us improvement across the entire scope of the testing. The math teachers did a lot of work, dug really deep into the data, and they came up with the questions that revolved around statistics and probability were the ones that were really giving us a problem. So our goal is to, bump up at least 2 points above the state average on questions regarding statistics and probability in that domain, and demonstrate a 25% increase in students testing at grade level and measurement data on the Math iReady. So we're trying to kind of go after the statistics and probability, but we also have some things in here that are going to address our Tier 1 instruction and our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions as well. So we've formed a math improvement team, and we're also giving math teachers monthly meetings to, again, share best practice and talk more regularly about how things are going in classes. We're going to continue to implement a multi-tiered system of support and differentiated instruction through all 3 tiers of instruction. We have presently a accelerated class in math. We have our what we call regular math classes, and we also have a regular math class that moves at a slower pace. It's a much smaller class, and there's a much higher student to teacher ratio. And that started last year, and I think one kind of light in the darkness is that the kids in those classes did show significant growth. So I think those interventions have been successful, and we're going to continue to do that with those classes. So that's our first 3 priority actions there. Moving on to page 15. We are putting together intervention groups. These are for kids that are like 1 to 2 years below grade level. We actually got those lists out this week, and as of the beginning of second quarter, and those are going to be starting during Flex. We're introducing and incorporating statistics and probability standards earlier in the year. It's something that's kind of left towards the end of the year, and sometimes we're not completed through it and not completely done with that. And that may be a reason why some of the kids are struggling on MCAS with those types of questions. And we're going to have our math specialist actually going in and modeling lessons much earlier in the year in all of our math classes that will concentrate on statistics and probability to get it more into the kids' understanding and be able to not be so unfamiliar with it as they go through the year. The math teachers are creating an assigned statistics and probability assessment for both 7th and 8th grade. They're doing some pre-assessment and post-assessment. They're going to use that to inform their instruction and see where there are gaps and where they can improve those. The math teachers are all reading a book called Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics, grade K through 12. This was actually recommended by our math consultant as well. We had already chosen to do that before she knew we were doing that, so she was pleased with that. So that's going to help, and I think Kelly can probably speak to what that book will actually help the teachers understand, and maybe we can have you maybe talk about that a little bit? Yeah.
Actually went for an eye appointment, so my eyes are dilated, but. So the book we're going to be doing is Building, I don't think it's on, is it? Oh, Building Thinking in a Mathematics Classroom, K through 12. And basically the gist of it is to help build thinkers. And I think that goes, we can say that throughout every subject area, that our job here is, yes, to teach them math and teach them the skills that they need to go out in the world, but we really want problem solvers. We want math thinkers, and we're preparing these kids for when they get out of school so that they could be problem solvers, not just in math, but throughout life, because that's an important skill that I think we need to work on. And we all feel that way. So this book helps math teachers kind of embrace the struggle of math and taking that time to work through a problem and be okay with not knowing the answer right away. So, and I think as teachers, I can speak from me anyway, when I'm introducing, we have a lot of curriculum. So when we're introducing curriculum, we know that we have to get through so much, but we also want to build thinkers. And it's that balance of how much time do you allow that struggle? How much time do you allow them to think through a problem? And I think this book will help us all learn more strategies and be confident in embracing that struggle and letting them think a little bit more. So that's the book we're going to be reading it as soon as it comes in, and we're all excited about it, and we'll keep you posted. Any other questions?
Thank you.
And then just the last action plan there is that they're going to do a little bit better job of using relevant MCAS questions on their regular unit tests, and try to use more online assessment, online tools to just get kids used to that, because the test is an online test for MCAS, and some kids, struggle negotiating that. I just would also like to add that this past week, we had Susan Resnick here, our math consultant, and myself and Patrick actually and some others did some walkthroughs through the middle school and the high school math classes. And at the end of that, she was able to give us a lot of really good observations. Our math people are taking those and are working on additional action plans based on those. Some of those are as simple as adding more whiteboards to math classrooms so that kids can get up and out of their seats and actually do problems more regularly around the room rather than just at their seats. We are looking at using iReady a little bit more. We're going to try to pilot something in those slower paced, smaller math classes where kids can really work with their iReady Get Math score and some of the resources that iReady gives us, and set goals for themselves to see where they can get to in a period of time. We're also been talking about how we better use our classroom support people, instructional assistants and such. And we're also going to be doing some things. We have two 1 8th and 1 7th grade brand new teachers, how we can give them a little bit more support and curriculum to help them get through what's always a crazy year when you're a first year teacher. So those are the two additional goals as requested. I want to thank you for pointing me in that direction. It was I'm going to say a fun task. It was an interesting task for me. I learned a lot about things that I hadn't really thought about in a while. So I hope that, with our school council, we put, we reviewed it. I got some feedback from them, and this is what we thought would be a good start. So that's it.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming back and submitting that, because it's not just for us as school committee members, it's for the community too as well.
Yep.
Because when we're coming out of this pandemic, parents want to know exactly what our plan is over the next 3 years, if that's what your plan is. Because we're saying if it's from now until 2024, we've got to make sure that our marketing, that we're putting out there exactly what we're doing to help their students. And I know there's great work being done at the middle school, the elementary schools, and whether it's good news or bad news, we have to make sure that we communicate it to the community. I always say this, it takes a village to get our kids through school, and we're all in this together. And I appreciate all the work that you guys do, and I'm sorry that it had to come to what it did for you to come back with this proposal.
No.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Go ahead, Paul.
Not so much a question, but just a comment. I'm really thankful that the staff from the middle school is here, as well as the leadership team. I think it's very important to come in for your colleague.
That is appreciated. All right, so now you want to hear about schedule, right? Okay. You guys got
All right, do you mind if I ask a couple
I'm sorry.
questions about the math? So I wanted to say as well, I'm really thankful to see this here. And I just want to kind of ask some of the same questions along the same lines as I asked about ELA. So I'm seeing statistics and probability on MCAS and measurement and data on Math iReady. I assume that both measure both, yes? Okay, I see Mrs. Buckley nodding out there. A different way of saying it. Okay, all right. And going back and forth, iReady also measures statistics and probability. Can you just explain there's one in here, it's 4G, it's about creating and assigning a statistics and probability assessment for 7th and 8th grade. Like, I guess I thought iReady was doing that already 3 times a year, so I guess I don't understand why it would be something else. Sorry.
Yeah, you get that one.
I left it on. Like the kids. So the pre-assessment that we actually did this week with 8th grade and 7th grade is finishing it up next week. The pre-assessment is assessing the standards, the 7th grade standards and the 8th grade standards. So the math teachers and I created the pre-assessment by going through the 7th grade statistics and probability standards and plucking a question from each standard and putting that on the pre-assessment. And we did the same for 8th grade, where iReady is a little bit different because it's adaptive. So it's going to meet the students where they're at. So it gives us a real good indication of where they're at.
Yeah.
And then it helps us kind of fill in the gaps.
Okay.
So we chose stats and probability because it's our last chapter of the year. So by May, they haven't even seen it, typically. I mean, we obviously try to prepare them before the actual test. But this is stats and probability it lends itself well to teaching in isolation. So what our thought in stats and probability, it was the one domain that both 7th and 8th grade scored below the state. Okay. So we thought, okay, let's do this one. And also because we feel like we could introduce it earlier in the year, and by the time, and then we can thread it throughout the curriculum as we go along. So then, bless you, when they get to MCAS, they're more comfortable with it, they've been exposed to it, and hopefully more confident and more successful. So I don't know if I answered your question about the pre-assessment.
I think you did. I think it was the adaptability piece, right, is that you can't get a standard idea of where kids are at.
And then we'll look through the pre-assessment results, and that will help us fine-tune our instruction, seeing what questions and what topics we need to introduce, and then we'll plan accordingly. And then we'll give them a post-assessment closer to MCAS. Okay. And iReady will also help us with that. So.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess one more question while you're up here is MCAS timing has always bothered me because there's things that come after it. Like there's, along much of the school year. If you're pulling statistics and probability earlier in the year, is there a risk that something else is falling out? I mean, obviously you have to teach something in that post-MCAS time?
We don't think so.
Okay.
Luckily, the district has 4 awesome middle school math teachers and special ed teachers and support staff that are amazing. So we're fortunate to have them working, and they work really hard, and they know how to incorporate these skills and concepts earlier and work them through. Our plan is with the thing with stats and probability too, that's great. Like we could do a Friday, take half of a class and do scatter plots. So it's quick. We can work it in easier. We can even do flip teaching where we can have them one night, instead of doing their homework that has to do with what they're doing in class, they can watch a video on, I'm just going to say scatter plots again because it's in my mind, and then talk about it the next day. So there's ways we can incorporate it. We also have the flex block, which will be great, and we can use that where maybe we're thinking that I can come in during flex to different classrooms and do a mini lesson there. So there are ways we can bring it in earlier, and we'll see how it goes. We're hopeful and confident that it will yield significant results. So micro moves that will hopefully yield some bigger improvements and more success.
Okay, thank you. And I assume that statistics and probability and measurement data are fairly significant chunks of both MCAS and iReady, essentially what they're supposed to be learning during
Yeah.
the school year, just like writing is for ELA.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think it's as much of a chunk as writing is, although I shouldn't speak to that because I don't really know the writing percentage, but yes.
Okay, thank you. And I guess this is for Al, just one comment. I just thought it was really interesting that the discussion on the book, and having heard from Salisbury Elementary when Catherine was talking about how students are kind of struggling to make it to the end of a problem sometimes, or maybe it was Jane that was talking about it, and just hearing that carryover is almost still happening, it sounds like, at the middle school, just that feeling like you can get to the answer and be successful at solving that problem. I just think that's really interesting that it's kind of, goes beyond elementary. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Al or his team?
Yeah, I was going to say you need to vote.
Yep. I'll make a motion to approve the Triton Middle School Improvement Plan as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. Right, now I'll talk about the schedule.
Let's go right into the schedule. Yeah.
All right. So if you got a couple hours, we can start talking about the schedule. I engaged a discussion and conversation about an aligned schedule at the high school, I don't know how many years ago. So it's been kind of out there for a long time. We were given some data that enrollment would be declining, so, we re-efforted to align a schedule again, and I won't go through that whole conversation again, we know the reasons why. So we were able to put together an aligned schedule at the high school. Working with the high school is great, but their needs are not the middle school needs. And the schedule ultimately we adopted to align with was really not a schedule that the middle school was 100% thrilled with. But there was a lot of conversations. We had a lot of scheduling committees meeting with high school scheduling committees. It was a 7-day rotation with a G period in it that the middle school didn't really need. But they needed it because they needed to have some breadth of places to put classes, and kids are on credits and things like that. So there's a lot going on at the high school that we don't have to have consideration for. So long story short, we adopted that. We ran that for a couple of times. It was never something the middle school really wanted to stick with. We had further meetings prior to COVID, and we had put together a continued aligned schedule, but it got rid of the drop for the middle school, but not for the high school. So it got a little out of alignment around the middle of the day, but we felt it was something that would work, and we could still, share resources if needed. We could have places where middle school kids could take high school classes if needed. We were going to pilot that, and then COVID hit, and that all kind of blew up. So coming out of COVID, Brian gave us the green light to the enrollment data wasn't so dire, so he gave us the green light to kind of separate and not align anymore. So again, we put together our scheduling committee. Paige Robatos here, she was our 8th grade science teacher, and she was on that committee, so I asked her to come along to help out my memory. We had a lot of discussions, a lot of proposed schedules. We did a lot of looking at other middle schools, what schedules they use, and we've settled on the schedule that we're now using. The big issue for the middle school was the drop class. It lended itself to not having continuity. If you had students on Thursday, they dropped on Friday, you didn't see them again until Monday. A lot gets lost in the middle school's mind between Thursday night and Monday morning. So having an ability to meet every class every day was something that was very important to the middle school teachers. You know, dropping a class puts classes on different timelines. Special education students that are in academic support classes, when they're trying to do pre-teaching and reteaching of things, and then that class is dropped the next day, it just makes it a lot more convoluted and difficult for those kids. And then we feel like when students come back from being absent, or even teachers coming back from being absent, having all their classes that day they're back makes it easier to get everybody caught up all at once. The other issue for us was we were using the G block in that schedule as our directed study across the school, and it did have some good uses, but it also became a kind of a behavior management time. It was, for the kids who had something to do, it was great. They could work on homework, they could make up tests, all that kind of thing. But it was 58 minutes every day of non-instructional time that became just somewhat problematic as the year went on. So that was another consideration why we wanted to kind of change to a smaller, more streamlined schedule. So we did. I don't know if you wanted to add anything. I know you had some notes, because she's done some informal surveying of teachers and kids.
So part of the scheduling committee, like Al mentioned, we took some time before we came out with our mini schedule for the middle school and surveyed the staff with a lot of very specific questions, asking them where their priorities were and what areas they felt were best for student improvement from the schedule that we had aligned with the high school. And one of the things that definitely stood out to us, as Al mentioned, was the taking away of the dropped class. You know, when you really think about the middle school brain and you think about how they need that consistency for the momentum of learning, I definitely observed in my classes when we were aligned with the high school that my pace was at least 2 to 3 weeks behind. You know, you look at the minutes, you try to add that all up and tabulate the time in learning, and although it seemed like it was consistent with what we had had for previous models, you can't have a student try to focus for 53 minutes straight on that concept or idea. Middle schoolers need breaks, they need pauses, they need change-ups, and even I got the conversation all the time, but Paige, you love it, it's science, you can do a lab. Even for 53 minutes of time, a lab was not enough to keep them engaged. So we would find that our pace was slower, and we would find that we would lose that momentum. And all of that really kind of played into us feeling that one of the major priorities, I believe the data said 66% of the staff felt that the drop was a bad idea, and we needed to remove that from the schedule. I can definitely understand, and I'm sure Andrew can attest to it, that for a high school brain, having that drop is very helpful. They have less work to have to worry about on a day-to-day basis. They have the ability to focus and attain that information in a longer period of time. But again, in middle school, we just aren't there yet. I would also have to say, after COVID, we are finding deficiencies in a lot of different areas, but executive functioning for sure, and the ability to stay organized and on top of their schedules without the teachers constantly reminding them what classes they have, what assignments they have due, they were lost. So now with that consistency, like Al mentioned, they see it each day, they understand what's due the next day, and they're able to kind of stay on top of that a little bit more. And it's easier for us to manage as well as the staff to help facilitate that learning of executive functioning along the way. I know there have been some sacrifices when it comes to us taking away the alignment with the high school. And although I still think that those are things that we should consider moving forward, what we can do, I feel like we have really reached a place where we're making progress. And if we're going to put the students first, I think that this is the best schedule to go by. So that's kind of what drove us in the middle school to change that schedule. I could keep going and going, but I'll stop. If there's anything else or any questions that anybody has?
The classes were actually 58 minutes last year.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
So when you were discussing the schedule and obviously the drop being an issue, was there a discussion to keep G period there and then keep the other specials? Because I believe executive functioning and the writing session was now eliminated as part of this. Is that correct?
You mean the class?
Yeah.
No, that there was still a place for that. We just, so the two teachers doing that class felt like it needed to really be timed around what teachers are doing in their regular classrooms, like projects and stuff like that. They were kind of making up projects for kids to work on executive functioning skills, if that makes any sense. And they felt like it as a standalone class, it was difficult. It was something we needed to really kind of talk about across the school. So we had the opportunity to switch, and we had to move some teachers around. We had wellness to teach, and can't remember exactly what other things we brought in, but that was how I remember that conversation. Nicole Toothaker was our 7th grade social studies teacher, was really spearheading that whole thing, and that was her feedback to me, that it was just too difficult to, make up work for kids that already have to do work, and it was hard to time those, because there are quarterly classes, with what was going on, when someone's going to do a project in science, say, or social studies, and have it work, because then the next quarter came in and those projects weren't going to be this. It was kind of bulky for them to deal with. So there was something else that happened too that we had to.
So shortening the classes and not dropping, would that have been a solution to this as well? If you're looking
For that
to not
class, I don't
drop?
think so, no.
Well, there were 4 of them, right?
Yeah, those are still, we still have that rotation. It's just that class isn't in that rotation anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I had heard concerns from 7th grade parents as well, that they didn't believe their students were getting that set of rotations anymore. They're definitely still happening?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So 7th grader has the regular, they have PE, wellness, art, and tech ed. That's their special rotation. They also have now the option of world language, current events in science, 20th century history, and we have a music elective, ukulele. I play ukulele. That's the other rotation that kids can opt to do. 70-something% of them are taking world language right now. That was another consideration. Bringing world language back has to fit in the schedule, and that's where we could fit it. If we end up eventually making that a core subject, that rotation will have to go away, because we already have 4 core subjects, and that would be a 5th.
Okay, yeah, so the specific concern I had heard was the loss of the executive functioning, which a lot of parents seem to think is a struggle for students as they're moving from elementary school to the middle school and becoming more independent learners, being able to kind of manage that on their own. And I guess there was a belief, perhaps unfounded, that the executive functioning class was assisting with that. And I think the writing kind of had been acknowledged. So the other thing that I was hearing most about from those 7th graders was the loss of reading writing lab and that additional dedicated time that was spent specifically on writing. So those, just to confirm, those are not happening anymore?
Correct. Another issue with the executive functioning class, and it's a quarterly class, so a group of kids wouldn't get that till 4th quarter. As far as the reading writing class goes, finding someone to teach it was difficult. It was taught by the previous reading specialist. We needed Tony to do other things, so I had to kind of move her out of that class to do some other things, helping in coaching and pushing into some classes. So that class was supposed to be, with the previous reading specialist, a more project-based type class, kind of a English 2.0 without them knowing they were doing English kind of thing. And I had a lot of communication, difficult conversations with her about that happening, and I never really got off the ground like we wanted it to do. And then, like I said, we had to move the person teaching that position, teaching it, to do other things. And then when you bring in, if we're going to go back, if we're going to have foreign language, and the popularity of foreign language is pretty high, and we end up making that a core subject, that we can't, it's very difficult to fit anything else in to the schedule with the 4 core classes we already have. So if that's the direction we end up going, those kind of classes would have to be phased out anyways.
Yeah, okay. So I understand that. I think part of it was, this was so abrupt for parents that a lot of them, there were expectations coming in, and I feel like there was nothing there to say, this is the reason why the change is happening. It was just sort of an abrupt, this happened. And I think that's part of it here. So I definitely, I respect the reasoning. It's just very hard. We're responsible to our constituents who elect us, as well as the schools themselves and the rest of the board. And when there are no, I'm trying to send them to Al, but I think when they're entering a new school, it's very difficult for a parent to feel comfortable enough to go to a principal and say, I don't understand why this was offered last year, or I believe it was, because this is what I've heard from parents who had kids in the middle school, but it's not being offered this year, and I don't understand it, and I feel like this is something my student needs. So I guess that was part of our concerns that sparked this conversation.
Yeah, so executive functioning is something that we need to do better on across the entire building, in every class. And I think some teachers do it better than others and focus on that better than others. So that's something that we really need to probably look at going forward. And that was the feedback we got from the teachers that were teaching that class. So to those out there who are kind of stuck with that abruptness, I apologize for that. But we're making decisions. That should have been better communicated, I agree.
Anybody else? I just have one question. I know part of that 53 or 58 minutes was for students who accelerated or needed to be more challenged than what was available to them. Now that that's not available, that block, I just want to make sure that the students who need to be challenged, that maybe would have taken a class possibly at the high school at that time, are still being challenged enough. I know when they get to the high school, they have honor classes, AP classes that they will be challenged, but I just want to be sure that we're not leaving out that small population of students that need to be more challenged than what's being offered.
All I could say to that is this year we have one student in 8th grade taking a 9th grade geometry class. He's using Educare, which is an online platform. We have a 7th grader taking Algebra 1. 2 years ago, we had 4 kids in 8th grade taking high school classes. Prior to that, there was probably 5 or 6 years we had no students that were taking high school class. So it's not, we deal with it when it comes up and we can work it out. It's not something that's really prevalent at this point. I would love to see it be more prevalent. And if it gets so prevalent, we probably have to take a look at the schedule again, because we do not have a geometry class in 8th grade. So, and that student came to us from Clark School, and they have a different scope and sequence, so he was that far ahead of it. So we had to do something with him in 8th grade. So.
And I know it's a small population of students. I just want to make sure that they're being acknowledged and able to be challenged as well.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Certainly.
You mentioned that solely for math there. Has there been any similar offering for ELA or other?
I have not had a student presented to me that needed strike. That one student I can remember over the years that was presented that needed more than like a math, English, they were pretty high flyer. They needed to maybe do some high school classes. I honestly don't remember what schedule we had at that time. I think it was even prior to this last alignment with the high school, so we had different schedules anyways.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I also know just from a teacher perspective, myself and a few others, that when we do have students that are able to reach the accessible curriculum and show us that they have that capability moving forward, we all differentiate and have like extensions or challenges in the classroom to offer that. I also think that with some of the classes we do offer at Flex, like robotics, that offers some of the kids that might have more aptitude in those areas to also explore something a little bit more and kind of just, get a little expansion to their understanding in a more fun way.
Can you describe what's happening with the performing arts classes and lunch and Flex, please? This is another thing that I've heard from, and I have tried to understand this. It's-
Absolutely. So
Thank you.
it did shift, I believe, Mr. McCray, you can clarify, but I know that there was this rotating schedule for band and chorus, where they would meet, odd days during flex for band, even days, bless you, for chorus. And there was a switch of lunches. They were trying to make it so that, for instance, for band, they want to have the 7th and 8th graders together as one so they can perform together. So there would be, I believe it's one day out of the cycle where they would meet, which of course means that one of the groups would have to miss their lunch with their peers in order to be available to meet as a unified middle school. So as far as I'm aware, that's happening less than it was originally planned for, because some students did come forward and say that they were missing out, and it wasn't fair that they were missing that time with their friends, which can be some of the only social time that they would actually have. So I believe they made some changes. There's still some days where that has to happen for both chorus and band, but they are able to then still be part of that enrichment and be in the band and chorus, and again, meet together as a full-out middle school.
Okay, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around all this. Okay, so I know, I'm sure, I'm feeling probably like you were when you were shuffling tiles on a board or however the heck you tried to put this together. So the middle school band members, some of the 8th graders were attending 7th grade lunch, and some of the 7th graders were attending 8th grade lunch on other days separate from their peers, but that's happening less. Is that accurate?
As far as I'm aware,
And that-
yes.
That is a
Okay.
practice we've done no matter what our schedule. We've done that to be able to get 7th and 8th graders together.
Okay.
In our previous middle school schedule, we've always had that, we've had to do that because lunches are different. So chorus 3 days a week, and band meets 3 days a week.
Yeah.
We've always had pretty much that, no matter what the schedule is.
So, okay. So when we're saying chorus meets 3 days a week and band meets 3 days a week, is that the 5-day, Monday through Friday, or is that the 6 days?
So this is where it gets a little complicated, because my chorus teacher only teaches chorus for us.
Okay,
So her schedule is basically 43 minutes a day for 3 days of the week.
Okay.
So I put chorus and band on a Monday through Friday schedule,
okay,
because it made it easier for her schedule to be able to be here. And then the band teacher was able to match with that. So the kids know they go to band on, I forget the days now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever it is. So they don't have to worry about day 6 or day 5 or day 4.
Okay.
And
So-
it seems to be working.
if you have students who are doing both, they have to miss,
So they're.
day of one.
When, like chorus, those kids have to miss, if they're a 7th grade lunch, they have to, I think they go to, 8th graders go to 7th grade lunch on those chorus days, and they have the 7th grade flex to do chorus.
okay.
So Narissa, the rest of your question is, every other week you miss either band or chorus. So 3 days a week is chorus, 3 days a week is band. Every other week, if you're in both, you go to either band on Wednesday or chorus on Wednesday, and you flip-flop every other week.
Okay. And if you're in band and chorus, what happens if you're a student that needs extra help?
It's a great question. We would offer them after school time, but that is definitely one of my concerns and always has been about the students that are in those courses, trying to find them more specifically when they're absent to help them catch up and not make them feel like they have to sacrifice something that they love to do or things that they're doing during flex.
Okay, and I assume is the same true of, that we were talking about perhaps additional drop-ins during the flex period for like statistics and probability, like a quick lesson? Those students would also miss that, and then somehow it would have to be made up at some point?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay, all right. So to be fair, this has probably been happening for a while, but like all of a sudden I heard a lot about this year from families that were affected because it was very confusing, I think, for both students and the family members coming into this and trying to understand how it all came together. My understanding is previously it was during the G block, so it was much more solid, I guess, than what's happening in the current schedule, which really seems to have, unfortunately, from what I'm understanding, in some part, caused people to leave those performing arts activities.
I would have to say that even when we did have the band and chorus during the G block, we still dealt with these obstacles. I would find that students definitely felt like they were being pulled in many directions where they wanted to get their homework done, but they would go to band and chorus and vice versa. So they might feel like it's a little different now with the complication of the schedule, but I don't think that that issue has changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I think we answered all your questions.
Can I say one thing about the enrollment? So the original reason, just to point out, the schedule was never aligned. And then as our enrollment was dropping, Al alluded to it very briefly, we were looking to make sure we could retain staff, provide opportunities for students, so align the schedule, and now it pulled apart. So for the majority of existence, my time, Al's time, the schedules were not aligned, and we're just now, we have our preliminary numbers for enrollment for October 1 Sims. So our preschool is up 1, our kindergarten is up 1 year over year. Our first grade is up 31, second grade is down 17, but that was that COVID year. Third grade is up 11, almost 12, fourth grade is up 5.8. So we're now seeing the rebounding, and for the first time, our enrollment went up 14 from last year, rather than a precipitous decade, solid decade of just numbers, sometimes big leaps, sometimes small little dribbles, but going backwards. So we're starting to see the up. So now this is where we've said, okay, we've reached the bottom, hopefully, and we don't have to worry about all of those other complicating factors, which is why I had said, yes, let's go back and make the schedule that works better. Again, as we've talked about tonight, it's not perfect, right? There are a lot of things we'd love to change, and anyone's interested in making a longer school day, sorry, that would be wonderful. Year-round schooling would be great. Anyone in favor? No?
Thank you, Al.
All right, well, another night. We'll come back another time.
And thank you all for being here. It was really helpful for us to understand.
Yes, thank you all. Principals, thank you for coming. Middle school, thank you for coming to support.
The next item is the full-day kindergarten update. Superintendent Brian Forger is going to talk us through the attached memo regarding full-day kindergarten.
Okay, I can make this quick, and certainly if you have questions, we're happy to answer them. I don't know, Anna, if you want to add anything here. You want to just take it? You want me to go?
Would you like me to?
Sure.
Great.
You guys always making fun of me for talking.
So we just have a little update, proposing an update to the kindergarten programming for next year. We, for the past couple years, have had half-day programming, but the half-day students who elect that option have been integrated into the full-day classes and then leave at midday. We do not provide transportation for them midday. So this year, we have only 4 students who have elected that half-day option. We have 3 at Newbury and 1 at Salisbury Elementary School. And what we're finding is there are some challenges with providing those students with a high-quality sort of curriculum in every area, because we're fortunate now to have high-quality curriculum in ELA with CCALA. We have Math in Focus. We're using Heggerty in the earlier grades. We have Inspire Science, and with the allotted time that is needed for students to engage in each of those curriculum areas, they cannot fit within that half-day program. So we have students who are leaving in the middle of math every day. And so our plan is to ensure that all students get the education that they really need. We're proposing moving to just the full-day option for the 23-24 school year.
Go ahead.
Just one question. Prior to having full-day kindergarten, back when we used to have that word that I can't come up with now, of course. We used to have to do a lottery. That's the word I was looking for. I know we had some parents that often didn't make the lottery, and they would go seeking a full-day kindergarten option elsewhere. And there was some difficulty in then assimilating those students back in first grade when they were coming back to us. I'm just curious if you've had questions with any of these families to try and understand their rationale for staying with half-day kindergarten. I'm just wondering if some of them would leave our schools to go seek a half-day kindergarten option elsewhere or something similar, and then it ends up being similar to the way it was before, with then having to try to assimilate those students who have received their kindergarten education essentially elsewhere, and then are trying to come back into the Triton elementary schools.
So I haven't had conversations with the families, although I know the principals have, and I believe that this number was greater than 4 at the beginning of the school year, and that they are in communication with those families often about, and we've been able to move some of them into the full-day option. There are some who I believe are getting picked up at Salisbury, not exactly at when the half-day should end, but they've said, can you just let them stay through math? So they're, because we're not providing transportation anyway, they're doing that. So I do believe the principals are in communication with these families. I think for some, and I've seen it with some of the little ones, that in the beginning of the year, they have a hard time moving to a full day, particularly if they were in one of our pre-K classes where they were coming in for a half day, 3 days a week. So that it would be my guess, is that it's more about families wondering, can their child engage in a full day program?
Okay, thank you. I just don't, my concern would be, right, that we simply lose the ability to educate these students at all in that first year, rather than gaining for them for the whole day. So I would hope we can make sure that we do everything possible so that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we can reach out to these families too.
Absolutely.
And find out, yeah.
And just to clarify, they're not going to find other half-day programs, right? So the reality is, full day, when you shift to full day, this is what you're supposed to do, because, as Anna was saying, we have to change the curriculum for all 186 of them. There's a ton of them this year, or 168 kindergartners, so that we can put all of that content in the morning and not utilize the full academic day. So it's to adjust it the way we did and have done half-day is impacting the delivery model for all kindergartners across the district. So this is, we kind of have to do this, but I don't think people are going to find a lot of other half-day, at least in public schools. They could improve it in private, absolutely.
Right, and that's what was happening before. I can say, speaking for Pine Grove, Parker River had a kindergarten program. We had students that didn't access the lottery, or sometimes even didn't want to try for the lottery because they knew there would be a lottery, and they wanted something that was a sure thing. So those students were going to a full day program at Parker River or even another private place, and then coming back to Pine Grove in first grade. And then that would be my understanding, just from the first grade teachers, was that could be a struggle to assimilate those kids back into the first grade classroom, because they had a very different kindergarten experience from what other students that had been at Pine Grove for kindergarten had.
Does anybody else have any questions on kindergarten? Nope.
So there's no decision there, just that you need to, no vote, just letting you know, because getting ready for kindergarten information nights again. Can't believe we're there already.
The next item is school committee goals update. Based on our approved goals, the document attached lists out the planned timeline for some actions. I tried to make it pretty self-explanatory. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, we will come back to this in January as we begin this work.
Bless you.
The next item is the superintendent's report. Brian will provide his monthly report.
Goals. That was quick. Okay. COVID update, just to let you know, I've got a So we had uptick in cases beginning of the year. It's leveled off. We certainly have cases, but we've continued to keep the dashboard updated, and they've kind of ebbed and flowed. Certainly, as I noted there, we haven't changed any practice and don't anticipate having to change any of our practices. Certainly, if something happens, we will adjust. We are going to take advantage of DESE is offering COVID tests for anyone who's interested. So they're giving every staff member and every student 2 boxes of tests, 1 box to use over the Thanksgiving holiday, and then 1 box to use over the winter break. So hopefully, waiting to figure out exactly when they're coming. I think they're coming the Friday before Thanksgiving. And then we'll put together a similar form as we did last year when families opted in, just to make sure we're not just going to put them in backpacks. We'll ask families to identify if they're interested one more time, put labels on them, and let parents know that those are coming home. Dress code update, I did share a draft with the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee tonight, along with public comments and feedback. We had 27 or 28, I think 28 right at the end, comments on the draft that went out. Great comments, thoughtful comments. This is always a tricky area. There are some, be nice to be able to say, can't wear this, you can wear this, you can wear this, and it's simply not that straightforward. So the draft that went out for public comment, there were a couple things we discussed this evening with the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee. Going to review it again one more time with the leadership team, but I suspect the policy as it was drafted by that working group will be what is put forward and brought to you in December for at least a first reading as a formal policy. And again, I want to ask or thank Anna and along with Kara Briley, who did a lot of work last year, spending lots of hours talking about this content. So we're getting there. We're almost to the finish line. Library materials process, you're going to be hearing more about this in the future, probably more from Anna. This is our neighbors next door in Newburyport. This has made the news pretty routinely with members of the public challenging materials that are within the libraries. There are, as noted here, there is a Library Bill of Rights, the Freedom to Read Statement, the U.S. Constitution. There are lots of documents that protect what is in a library. We have policies that govern how materials are chosen. And so what we haven't had is a procedure on how we would determine if a material, some library material is removed. So there is a mass statute. It is the shortest statute that I've ever read in my entire life that basically says curriculum and library materials are removed with a 2/3 vote of the school committee. Literally, that's the extent of the statute. So because this was never really an issue and now is, Anna worked with the librarians to put together a draft challenge procedure. This is not the procedure. We're almost there. Actually, Anna and I met with our attorney today to review that, and so I think there'll be some minor tweaks, and then we'll bring that to you for formal adoption in December. I can tell you the basic procedure will be that there will be a local group with an administrator, a teacher, the librarian, and a member of the community that when someone formally challenges, and it's not just, I don't like that document you're using, there's a formal documentation that's required. The individual would have to submit. If the principal gets one of those, then they would convene that committee. That committee would make a determination based on the original intention of why that material was placed into the collection. If the suggestion is to remove it, then it's resolved right there. I should say first, there is an opportunity for someone to talk to the librarian, right? And so it could be resolved. If not, formally it goes to a school group. If that school group chooses to keep it and the person challenging doesn't like it, it could come to me. If I choose to overturn it, I could. If not, likely would not. If the school group and the community member there believes it should stay, they would have a right to appeal to the school committee. It would then require a 2/3 vote of the entirety of the committee, not those present, but you're a 9-member, so there would have to be 6 yes votes to formally remove an item from the collection. So just to give you an update there that we are doing the work on that, so we can bring that to you in, I think, by December, based on the conversation today. I thought it might get more complicated, but I was pleased that it actually was very simplistic in our conversation so far today.
Can I ask one question about that?
Certainly.
Does that apply as well to individual teacher classroom libraries or any collections that they may have there?
So the policy that we have, that you have in your manual, it's not IJL, it was right next to it, there's a curriculum. There's also there's a curriculum selection materials. So the same statute, your 2/3 vote is the statute that governs curriculum materials as well. So my understanding, and this was more, not even discussion with Anna and our attorney, it was down the Cape listening to the MASS attorney, is classroom libraries are quasi parts of the collection, right? There's a very different process that a teacher selects those reading materials versus a broader collection, but they would follow the same process to be challenged, yes. Yeah. All right. French Exchange, won't read that other than to say they were here. They had a blast. Our students will be visiting them all in the spring. Logo survey results. I won't read through this all, but I shared with you there, obviously, the 2 that were put out to the public. I broke on page 4, I broke down the results by group. So overall, it was 81.5% in favor of the Viking and 18.5% in favor of the ship. And then you can see broken down by current students, it was a 90-10 split for the Viking. Current staff members, call it a 70-30 split for the Viking. Current parents, call it an 80-20 split for the Viking. Alumni, pretty strong, almost 96-4 for the Viking. Former staff members, interesting splits, call it roughly 60-40 for the Viking. Parent guardians of alumni, about a 75-25 split. Community members, call it roughly a 70-30 split. And other 13 individuals, roughly a 70-30 split. So, so unless there is any other, largely that speaks for itself, the response of the group and the community at large. There were 1,800, what's my number, and 46 unique responses. This was done through SurveyMonkey, which restricted people from answering more than once on a device. Certainly, people could figure out, I could do it once on my phone, once on my computer, but we also set up unique collectors so that the collector on Facebook was different than the collector on Twitter, than on the website, than on email. So if someone flooded it, sent it off to friends and said, everyone vote for the ship or everyone vote for the Viking, we would have been able to see that. And each of those collectors largely matched one another as far as the breakdowns. So I anticipate next finalizing that and then working with Andrea to update. Part of the work she mentioned here is the standardization, right? This is as much about creating a standard presence across the district. As much as the amazing work that the principals and the teachers and everyone's doing, there's discrepancies, and one school might be using a cool platform and not another one, and so it's all about standardizing. We literally have 17 different Vikings floating around on different uniforms, some ships, actually. So whether it's the district letterhead or the district website or a sports team or a band or what have you, it will all shift to that, the updated Viking. One of the things I will probably be coming to you with, and I haven't figured out yet, if Kyle let me have some money, is we played with the idea of buying everyone in the district a T-shirt with the new logo. Andrea talked about, she calls it a tagline. Again, marketing, business world, we call it our core values. But even, kind of rethinking that and taking a process to, it's not memorable, and making it into an actual tagline rather than just core values. And maybe we wait for that and go through that process a little more before we do, but I think it'd be nice to, I will say from experience, the Pentucket went through an entire rebranding, redoing their logo, and then everyone in the district got a T-shirt. And at first, it was kind of like, come on, it's a T-shirt. And then when everyone had them on, you think, it's actually pretty cool, right? You're trying there now. They went from the Sachems to the Panthers, so it was a big process. It was a big change. This is obviously very different, but I think there's power in that, in having that kind of collective, not the gift of it, but just the having that collective thing. So, any questions on that? No? All right. And then Andrew actually mentioned it earlier. Tomorrow, we're dedicating the POW MIA chair. It is installed in the stadium. It's actually on the, now that I realize it's actually on the visitor side, but it's okay. So it's actually, as you go into the bleachers, it's in the first section there. So Don Jarvis, who came to you twice to make the presentation, has actually worked with our town veterans agents and it was just, I did put his name. Yeah, Doug. Doug Aylward, who is a student, has spearheaded this and done a tremendous job, even down to the script that he wrote for this ceremony. It's incredible. So he mentioned Bruce Tarr, had nothing to do with that, reached out. They have it all lined up. Bruce knows it's a short ceremony. So everyone will be leaving last period, I think it's 1:18, is that right? Heading out to the stadium. It'll be the entire middle school, the entire high school, quite a few veterans that the three town veterans boards have pulled together, have the ceremony, move on, and then kids will be on their way, and obviously home on Friday. So personnel reports attached. Thankfully, it's slowing down. So any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I know that, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I know that Bruce Tarr is coming,
Yes.
and we could possibly have 2 new reps that represent Triton. So I know one of them, Dawn Shand, has been confirmed. We're not sure about Mira, but think it would be good for us to invite them as well, see if they're available.
I honestly don't know if they might have been, or other current legislators were invited. I can check. I don't know if by tomorrow morning, if with 8 hours' notice, they'd be able to be here, but we certainly.
But it's always that
Yep.
we invited you.
Yep. Yep.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, you, after the personnel report last time, I'd asked about Kids Club, and I wondered if you were going to look into that, Kids Club staffing.
Yes. What were we looking into?
The question was about how fully we were staffed and how much additional, because I understand that there's some wait lists, and also the job posting had disappeared. There was only one listed for Newbury. There was nothing listed for
Yes.
Raleigh or Salisbury.
So so there are 2 postings now. We are still short. We are looking to hire both at Newbury and at Pine Grove. And actually, we're working, Nicole was just with the Daily News and Monster and some other ones to get it out there in other ways. So we are still looking to expand.
Do you have any idea how short we are? That was one of the,
I think it's 2 per school.
okay.
I believe we are in the process of hiring one at Newbury right
Okay.
now. So, but yeah, we're definitely having issues, like challenges with Newbury because the Kids Club coordinator is also a staff member and therefore attends professional development on Fridays, and it was an unanticipated challenge, I think. So yeah, it's still looking at Newbury. And then I think Pine Grove has plenty of they have a large number of students who are working there, so interns, but we're definitely looking to hire more adults.
Okay.
And that's where they're, obviously because of the camp closing.
Yes.
So that's where still the greatest need is
Yeah.
with families we haven't been able to get in.
Okay. Is there a hope we're going to be able to clear that wait list? I just know a lot of people are like trying to juggle childcare still, and some people are trying to make decisions on coming back into the district or even entering the district based on whether they can get after-school care.
I would never say,
Yeah.
right? Do I hope? Absolutely. I also hope Kyle gets to sleep past 4 o'clock one of these days and does not have to rearrange all the bus routes
Me
every
too.
morning, right? So it's Yes. Is it being worked on? Absolutely. We're advertising, I mean, I don't want to tell you what it costs to put actually in the newspaper now, give me a break. But yes, we're doing everything we can, right? Even, I think custodians, have we figured out? I mean, all these, it's these, we've upped the rates, we're paying $3 more an hour, and we're still struggling. So it is just, man, it is a tough market right now.
I hear you.
So,
All right, thank you.
so I want to give them hope, but I don't want to give them
Yeah, I
that they
know.
hang and make a decision, hang their hat on it. I would hate to lose people and go to other, districts, but we should also say, we mentioned this to the finance subcommittee the other day, even with staffing within our district programs for special education, and we're finding that we're not able to meet the needs of some of our highest, most challenging students. And I know Shannon and I and Kyle were talking earlier today about having discussions about students who were having conversations with parents and teams and saying, look, we hope we can bring back someday, but for right now, we don't have the staff. And so that's going to have a significant financial impact. So it's challenging.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Brian? Okay, could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to receive and file the November 2022 Superintendent's Report as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The middle school, high school funding proposal. The superintendent and the director of finance and operations are going to walk us through this proposal as recommended to the full committee by the finance subcommittee.
So I'm going to hand this right over to Kyle. So this was discussed at the finance subcommittee. And so just to confirm that we're looking for an action here tonight on your part to give us some support.
I'll jump right in. So quick refresher on how we've landed to where we are right now. We had the comprehensive facilities assessment, when was it now? Forever ago, 2019, where we assessed the state of this facility, now developing a plan to address the needs of this facility, and working with the state to potentially tap into state funds to not only just fix the needs of this building, but look towards the future, a 50-year solution. So in doing so, last March, we submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA. In the first week of October, the MSBA had an on-site visit here to ask us a number of questions, and as well as have a visit around the facility. And now the next step is we expect at the beginning of December, we'll hear back from the state, the MSBA, whether or not we're admitted into the program. If we are admitted into the program, it opens up what's called a eligibility period, 270-day period, where there's a number of different criteria or items, checklist items that we need to satisfy. One of the largest of which is to have a feasibility study contracted and develop a funding plan for that feasibility study. Again, that, being repetitive with my words, a feasibility study is where we investigate the needs, not only just the needs of the building, but how we can, what a renovation project might look like, various sites where that, if we had to rebuild a new facility, what that would look like. So in preparing for that path going forward, again, we won't know if we're invited into eligibility until the beginning of December, but we want to prepare for a funding plan for that feasibility study. And current market estimates are around $1.5 million for that study. That cost would ultimately be 55%. The reimbursement percentage would be applied to that feasibility study going forward, but we still need to carve out the full 1.5 million. There's two ways we can go about that. The first option would be to go to our communities and request funding from them for the cost of that plan. The second option would be for us to fund it internally using our own reserves. That second plan is what we're proposing here in this document of it's a two-tiered approach to securing that $1.5 million of reserves. On the second page here of this document, it outlines that of the 1.5 million, we're first, how do I want to put it? The best way to put that funding in reserves would be to transfer it over to our stabilization fund, which was newly adopted last year. And so two different pieces. There's a $500,000 transfer we're proposing, and then there's a $1 million transfer that we're proposing. The $500,000 we're proposing be transferred from the FY22 certified E&D excess and deficiency. Quick recap on that is that our reserves get certified by the state every year, and we can utilize those for various purposes. We're recommending that we're estimating, we know the number, it's just over 1.1, but that needs to be certified by the state. We're proposing that of that certified balance, $500,000 be transferred over to stabilization. That's one piece. And then the second piece, $1 million, is right now with our COVID grant relief funds, we've had 3 different allocations of ESSER funding. ESSER is the COVID relief grant funding. That last piece, ESSER 3, we had a total of 1.9 million allocated to the district. We have about 1.1 million left on the table that has not yet been fully committed. So trying not to get too confusing with the accounting of this, but ultimately what we're proposing is that we reduce, as part of the fall adjusted budget, which will be in January, we're going to reduce certain line items in the budget and shift that appropriation over to a transfer account, a transfer to the stabilization. And then we would backfill those budget shortfalls from reducing the budget with ESSER funds. All of those budget adjustments, so on the third page, there's a visual here, probably best to walk through that. Right at the bottom of the third page there, we list a series of line items. These line items are all costs that are eligible to be charged to ESSER funding per the grant requirements. We've also spoken with the state specifically and gotten permission to do this type of mechanics. So we'd be reducing each one of those line items by the noted amounts, and then again backfilling those with ESSER funds and using that available budget capacity to transfer $1 million over to the stabilization fund. A lot of mechanics there, but and one other note I just want to make too is there could be the question of, okay, what's happening the year after that? Are we creating a funding cliff? We're not, because this is just a one-year transfer, so to say, and then all those budgets will go back to where they were. And in the history in the budget document, we'll also put a notation there to, if the histories look a little off, right, you would notice that fluctuation. I'll pause there, kind of covered a lot.
So I just want to backfill one piece. So as Kyle mentioned, all of the things we would be transferring to the ESSER funding qualify for ESSER funding. We could also pay for the feasibility study out of ESSER funding. That would also qualify as well. Two pieces there. One, the timing. ESSER needs to be fully expended by September of 2024. Yes, there's some days and periods beyond that. We would likely be feasibility studying into 2025, calendar 2025. So this pulls the funding into a local stabilization account. Second to that, we then, assuming we partner with the MSBA, this is all on the assumption that we get that wonderful call in December, I'm estimating we would be at about a 50% reimbursement all of those funds, if we spend 1.5 million out of our capital reserves, and we get a 50% reimbursement, we get 750,000 of that back. So there is some discussion about, could ESSER be reimbursable? Technically, by the law, it would not. Any other outside grants, and we talked about this with the Pine Grove project, if the PTA funded something, we talked about a sign. If the PTA give 50,000 for a sign, the MSBA would literally write off 50,000 out of their grant, just right off the top. Nope, you got that money, so you don't need it from us. So there is some discussion about tweaking that, because a lot of cities and towns are doing this, a lot of with their ARPA, which goes right to cities and towns, funds to do the same thing. So there could be, right? There could be that mechanism. We could qualify through ESSER, but the timing isn't great. This is the sure bet, right? This is the surefire. We're putting it all in. It's a completely legal. It's what the towns, Neil Harrington said this to me 2 years ago. I hope we're going to do some of this, reserves for the money. So the converse of that, before we jump to questions, is, so what about that $1 million out of ESSER that we're not going to have available, right? So we had, ESSER 1 was 8 and change, ESSER 2 was $1 million or 8 and something.
Yep.
We've had millions that we've spent. And in the reports that, Kyle, and you have it in your consent agenda with the Finance Subcommittee, roughly 1.1 million left uncommitted. So it leaves, it's 80-something thousand, right? That if we take that million, that still remains uncommitted in ESSER. So there are things that we won't be able to do. The reality is this ESSER grant we had to submit, was it last October?
It was in October.
October of last year.
Yeah.
Like a year ago.
Correct.
So this was before we had even finished spending down ESSER 2, so we had to just put into buckets. So we had all the very round numbers, right? Very atypical for a grant. So when we chose those buckets, those are priorities. They remain priorities. However, as the two guys with several other people who have to stare down this building and know the ticking time bomb that it is, the worst piece being the roof, which, as we walked around with the MSBA, they said, what's your plan in the short term? Because a project with the MSBA is 5 to 7 years. So we've got to have something up our sleeve for the roof. But we don't have 11 million sitting around, right? So the reality is this is a necessary first step for us to get into partnership with the MSBA. And I can confidently say that while there are other priorities, and we'll have to talk about how we fund those other areas, this is absolutely an urgent need and a top priority because we don't have any other way to fix this. So that is a key point that as we go through here to note right up front, there are other things that we're not going to be able to do. And we'll talk about through the budget process. There are things, as just a wellness coordinator and half a math specialist, right, at the middle school that we funded through ESSER.
Salisbury as well.
And at Salisbury, the student manager, the coordinator students, I forget the name of the position we created. So we're talking about, that was a short-term position, but the others that we believe need to be long-term, starting to phase those into the budget. So we've got the plan in place so that we know, we always knew ESSER was short-term CLIF funding. So we'll stop there.
Just one other piece I'd like to add to this is the timing of the proposal, is that we expect to hear back from the MSBA in early December. So if we're admitted into that period of eligibility, then this proposal would come into play. At the December Finance Subcommittee, we would then present the proposed adjusted budget for the year with these adjustments included, and then that would go to the full committee in January for a vote.
And one more thing. So as far as timing, so we can do this as quickly as we need to with the MSBA. So if we need to wait for a town meeting for a vote for a feasibility funding, that's a timeline we have to hit, right? So we're likely going to hear, welcome, in December, but that's going to be early December. It's going to be you can't say anything yet. So then we officially hear on December 21st, I believe is the date, that clock starts ticking at a meeting of our choosing in April, May, or June. That starts a 9-month window, which means if we need to wait for a town meeting, it would have to be a fall town meeting. to get a vote for a feasibility, and I'm prepared to stand up in front of the towns and do the dog and pony show when we have pictures of the building in the 3D fly-throughs and all the wonderful, see what you're going to get for your fill in the blank of the amount of money. It's really hard to stand there and say, we need $1.5 million to figure out what we want to do. So in our conversations, it's been, this is the fiscally prudent thing to do. It's not ideal, right? We would love to spend the money on other things, but it's, for all the reasons we mentioned, we believe it's the right way.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian? Or Kyle? Narissa?
So first of all, I think this is brilliant. I think I remember when we first started talking about this, like I said at one point, I think to Kyle, I just feel like it needs to be all or nothing. Like it's either all override or it's all like sitting in our budget. It can't be half of each because then it gets really confusing. And I feel like that's when, once we confuse the voters, we start to meet resistance just because if they don't understand it, they don't know how to, they feel like they can't support it. So I'm really glad to see it all coming from essentially one pot in the long run and just let's get it into the pot and then use it from there. I really appreciate what you said about a fiscal cliff, because I feel like, again, talking about uncertainty, that could be something that can be thrown our way. I'd love to see that worked into this document so that wherever this document goes, that knowledge that we are not creating a fiscal cliff in the budget is traveling along with this document, because we know how documents can go.
Well, I think it would be even, we have DCC next week. So depending if
Yes.
you're on board with this, to share, we can add some narrative to that comment, this document before it goes into the DCC agenda. Again, if you're all on board.
I agree. Would also love to see the piece about reimbursement, because I think that's important. Like we're putting in district money, right? But there's roughly half of it is going to be coming back to the district because we're using this methodology. Like this is a smart way to go because we're getting half back. One of my questions is, when we get that half back, I've never dealt with the fiscal side of it before. Does that go right back into our stabilization if we spent it out of stabilization, or does that essentially somehow come into our operating budget and then we have to transfer?
I would say with 99.999% certainty, based on the way Pine Grove works, if you borrow money, you borrow it all, right? So you short-term ban.
Yep.
You only have to borrow. If we go to the town meetings for a vote, the MSBA requires a vote of 1.5 million.
Right.
Even though ultimately we would spend 750, right, using that figure. If we're not taking any town meeting votes, we've got 1.5 in stabilization. The way the MSBA Pro Pay works is they reimburse within 30 days, but they reimburse the district. We pay the full. Right, we pay the bill, right? We get a bill from an engineer for $1 million.
Correct, that's why we have the bans.
Right, so, and we wouldn't pull any bonds, it would all be coming out of capital. But I don't believe, I guess that'd be a question of, can you put money, that's a question we can take away, because the money would be going directly back to the reserve where it came from.
Yeah. My concern is if we run into a major problem during the feasibility period, will we have funds in stabilization to be able to use toward that?
Above the 1.5?
No, out of this, if we're assuming there's 750,000 coming back, let's say we have a major roof issue, right? Not covered by insurance, happens during the feasibility period. Are we going to have money in stabilization as that money is starting to come back to us to essentially put towards that roof fix? Because we know that this roof especially, like I said, keeps me up at night. It's on borrowed time.
Yeah. So I think, right, so
I'm going through the accounting mechanics in my head and how.
Maybe it's an after-meeting question, too.
Yeah, I want to follow up with you on that.
I just want to make sure that we're not, in putting all our eggs in one basket, we're not potentially hurting ourselves really badly in the short term, if that makes sense.
So, yeah, we would be getting so if we spend 100,000, right, so call it over a year, we spend 100,000, that's at 1.2. Within 30 days, 50 of that comes back.
Yes.
And so I think it's for you, it's a mechanics question, IRS, DOR, and how does that come in to play and how we book that?
Yeah, because no matter what, we get that 50% back.
Yeah.
Like you said, And then the ability to transfer that back into the stabilization fund versus keeping it there for further project costs.
Yeah.
So let me check on that.
Okay. All right. I just remember going back to, site visit and them saying like, you shouldn't count on stuff not going wrong in between, now and getting to a renovation. So I think we have to account for that as part of our figuring. Okay. And my last question is, are we fairly confident? He's confident. I appreciate that.
Mechanics. Oh, did you mean that without the microphone on?
My last question on this is, I know we've had a bunch of different numbers floated. 1.5 is sort of the middle. What happens if it ends up being more than 1.5? Is there a plan to?
So you actually agree the budget in the feasibility process. So you were part of that discussion. They said 750 to 2 million. We would set the budget if in discussions with MSBA and engineers, they said it really should be 1.6. We could then come back to you and say, you know what, we're proposing we take 100,000 out of choice or something like that. But we wouldn't. Whittier, massive, right? Obviously, huge study. They're at 1.8, they set as a budget. So again, we set the budget, it's put out as a not to exceed, and that's what the contractors, OPMs, designers bid against. So we get to decide that. And we would have the time during that feasibility period, during that 9-month window.
To adjust more
set
if
that.
needed.
We would agree to certify the enrollments and all those kind of structures that feed into that figure.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much. And I really do like this. I just think it needs to make sure we tell the whole story because it will travel on its own.
Love it.
Are you done?
I'm done.
I'm in him.
Sorry.
I could go more.
Yeah, you want Kyle to keep going? Yeah, so there was a motion in the,
We already made it.
oh, you did.
No? You ready for a motion?
Oh, I thought we did.
The second that motion.
I'll make a motion to approve a plan to fund the potential feasibility study if welcomed by the MSBA in December 2022.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? The next item is subcommittee reports. Policy and advocacy, Paul Goldner to update.
So policy and advocacy met before this meeting. We have a fair number of financial policies that will be coming back for a first reading next month that we've reviewed. We also looked at the memorials on school grounds policy today in reference to our last meeting. And we will be bringing a recommendation back to the committee for what to do about that as well when we discuss that installation. Again, we also reviewed the dress code policy and the comments. We will be recommending that that be adopted as district policy, I believe, is what will be coming back in December with that as a first reading for district policy as well, rather than to go into the handbooks. And then we also have been talking about having a policy review cycle so that all of our policies are reviewed on a regular basis, and we have set up a calendar for reviewing every section of the policy manual each year. So there's certain policy sections each year so that they are all under review on a cycling basis. And our next meeting will be in December, and we are having preliminary discussions about possibly moving it off of the Wednesday of the regular meeting. So it may be that Wednesday, and it may be a different date to be confirmed. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Paul. Next is finance, Paul Mayette to update.
So we met last week, focused on everything we've just been talking about, and all agreed that this way forward. And the only other major piece that I think we should, bring up, and Brian brought it up already, was the possibility of some students looking to seek placement out of district, and making sure that we keep an eye on that situation and the financial implications there. And we meet again December, the week before vacation, was it?
Thank you, Paul. And personnel and negotiations, Paul Least update.
So we met last week, I think, with the Unit B of the TRTA, our first meeting, and we're going to meet, we're just going through negotiations for the contract, and with the Group A TRTA, we're going to be meeting with them tomorrow at 3:30, and I think that'll be our third meeting.
Thank you, Paul. And before we adjourn, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And it's hard to believe that we're actually saying that. And once again, I just want to thank you all for the work that we do. It takes all of us to do this work. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Have a nice night.